One of the built-in classes that Java provides is the object class. And the object class is the root of the Java class hierarchy. And what that means is that every class in Java, whether it's a built-in class or one you create, has the characteristics of the object class. What that means is that using the object class, we can declare references that can point to any class type. So it can be variables, fields, parameters. And because arrays are classes, objects can even point to arrays. So it's really kind of this kind of universal reference type. But it's more than that. The object class actually has methods that are defined on it. So that means that there are specific characteristics and capabilities that are common to all classes. So if we look at the idea of inheriting from the object class, every class inherits either directly or indirectly from the object class. Let's look at some of the classes we've written throughout this course. Right, we have our flight class. Right, so if we were diagramming this, we might just kind of draw a box representing the flight class. Then, of course, we have our cargo flight class, so we'll draw a box for that. Now, remember that when we declared the cargo flight class, we said that it extends the flight class. Right, so the way we diagram that is that we just draw an arrow up to flight saying that cargo flight inherits from the flight class. Now, looking at the flight class, there's nothing about it extending anything, but what's implied in that class declaration is that the class flight extends the object class. Right? So by not saying what it extends, it implicitly extends the object class. So to diagram that, we would have the object class and flight inherits from that. You could actually write extends object after the flight class. It just wouldn't change anything. Having nothing there has the same effect. So if we look at our passenger class, right, we don't say it extends anything, but when we diagram it, it still extends object. So what we see here is that whether classes are related to one another or not, they always extend the object class, meaning that we can treat any class as an object. Right? So to put that into practice, so let's declare an array we'll call stuff. Right? Its type is object, and we've created 3 spots in it. So maybe the first element holds a reference to an instance of flight. The next one holds a reference to a passenger instance, and we could even add another one that's a cargo flight. To see what it's like to work with object references, let's go here and declare object O that points to an instance of passenger. Once we do that, that same variable O can also be used to point to an array of flights. Now to be very clear here, right, on the left we made an object array that's pointing to lots of different class types. On the right here, we're simply saying that because arrays are classes, we can assign an array to a variable of type object. Now, we wouldn't have access to any of the array characteristics of it, but we can hold the reference. We can now take that same O and point to an instance of cargo flight. But again, to reinforce that idea, remember that when we have a reference of a given type, we can only access the capabilities that are visible to that reference. So if I was to try to take O and call add one package, a method that's specific to cargo flight, right, that's not going to work because the reference O doesn't know anything about this idea of add one package. Now, does that mean that the object we created, cargo flight, is any less cargo flight because the reference O can't get to the cargo flight capabilities? Of course, the answer is no. Right? Let's see what this means in terms of what's happening here. Remember that we declared our reference O of type object. We newed up a cargo flight, and of course, O then holds the reference to cargo flight. So even though O only knows about object capabilities, it's still pointing to a cargo flight object. So we should be able to get back to those cargo flight capabilities, right? And so we can actually do that. So we could declare a variable, we'll call it CF, and assign it what's in O. Now, if we tried to use this code as it is here, we would actually get an error because the compiler would look at that and say, well, wait a minute. O can point to many different types. There's no way for the compiler to know that there'll actually be a cargo flight in there. So what we can do is add an explicit cast that says, no, I know there's a cargo flight in there. Now we want to make sure that it's true because if it wasn't true, we'd actually get an error at runtime. Right? So what happens when we make this assignment, we've got our reference CF, but CF understands cargo flight and it ends up pointing to that same object that was in O, cargo flight. So now using CF, we can call add one package. And again, to reinforce this point here is that we want to make sure when we made that assignment that there really was a cargo flight in O. If there's any doubt about that, we can verify it in code. We can wrap this in a condition that says, well, if O instance of cargo flight. What that'll do at runtime is it'll actually look at the object pointed to by O and make sure it actually is a cargo flight. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have run the code in there that assigns it to the cargo flight CF. Now looking at our object class, the object class is not just for references, it actually has characteristics, it actually has methods that are built in. Now we're not going to go into all these in detail right now, but I just want to make you aware of them. One of the built-in methods for the object class is the clone method. That allows an object to create a duplicate of itself. There's some caveats to working with that we're going to talk about later on in the course. Another method that's available to the object class, and therefore to all classes, is hashcode. It returns back a hash code that's useful for working with things like hash tables and other types that rely on hash tables. The getClass method returns back type information about an instance. The finalize method is part of resource cleanup. In most cases, you won't do very much with the finalize method. Then we have the toString method that returns back a string of characters representing the current instance. We're actually going to talk about that one more in the next module. And the last one is the equals method, which you use to compare one object instance to another. We're actually going to talk about that one in the next clip.